Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. We are back again with another episode, and today very pleased to bring onto the show as our guest Simon Shea de Boer. How are you? Good to see you.
It up as everyone is, and kind of functioning relatively as normal, to be honest. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, it's a bit of an unusual time, but those of us that spend a lot of time working behind a screen and are able to continue doing so, it may not quite as well as it does for some others, I guess.
Definitely. I guess
Now, sorry, we get a little bit of a lag with the video, so hopefully we won't speak over each other too much. But such is the nature of the platform that we're using. Maybe you could give just a sort of a little intro to where you fit into this big wide world of technology things in New Zealand, and we'll dive in more later on into the show into the story of your startup.
Okay, yeah, sure. I hope the signal just got a bit blocky as we went live, so I'm hoping that's not a problem for everyone. So Reality Virtual, we're basically a R&D VFX company that focuses primarily on real time. So basically, we're a research and development company that's very interested in the processes of delivering real-time immersive experiences, let it be spaces and places around the world, but also in faces, like essentially providing volumetric solutions for people doing performances and acting and live broadcasting in the third dimension, pretty much.
It's pretty cool stuff. I've heard you use the term that you are backing up the world.
Backing up the planet. They must remove that edit. It's back up the planet. Hashtag back up the planet. So basically for the last 3-4 years, I've been running around the planet and scanning, acquisitioning, or what we call encapsulating a multitude of different environments around the place. Such notable places as Queen Nefertari in the Valley of the Queens, and King Tut, that I'm sure everyone knows about. We actually got a Lumia Award earlier this year, the prestigious Lumia Award, for best virtual reality educational application.
That's awesome.
So that was pretty cool. Yeah. And 8 months ago, me and my CTO my chief technology officer were running around the Large Hadron Collider, CERN. We've done numbers of locations. We've done a number of locations locally, St. Matthew's Cathedral, Sir James Wallace, the Homestead. Just a bunch of them.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah. We'll delve into a little bit more of that later on in the show. Now, I just wanted to give a shout out and appreciation to our show partners who are Sumo Logic, Vodafone, Spark, Vocus, HP, and Samsung. Now, it's those firms that are making the New Zealand Tech Podcast possible, and also getting behind the tech community here in New Zealand. So, big thank you to those brands for their support and participation. Now, we're going to jump through and sort of chat about some of the tech news of the week, and then dive in to really hear a bit more of the story of Reality Virtual, and your recent success and funding that you've achieved, which is pretty exciting. First up, I started speaking on the last episode about a little gadget that I've got in my hand here that sort of looks like a half-size smartphone, and that's because it folds up, and it's the new Samsung Galaxy Z Flip, and I don't know, this sort of caught my attention when Samsung unveiled this to me alongside the new Galaxy S20 series ahead of their public announcement. Would be going back, I guess, a couple of months now, and finally got it in my hands last week, and I've had a bit of a chance to play around with it. And I got to say that there's just something about this technology. We've heard about folding screens and flexible screens and so on for so many years, but now it's here. And I mean, this is the second folding phone from Samsung, but this one seems to actually be something that it feels reasonably robust. And I know, reading some of the things online where people have tried to scratch the screen and so on and have been successful, you still need to treat it with care. But I don't know, there's something about it. It just seems pretty cool to me. What are your thoughts on this one, Simon? Your eyes seem to light up when I look at the camera.
I'm a little bit jelly. Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of the Z Flip, and obviously the first generation Fold. Been kind of eyeing it up quite a bit. I have a real bad tendency of going through cell phones very fast, so I was kind of holding back for second generation on the actual Fold. But the Z Flip looks like a remarkably beautiful device, and they have done extremely well. Really pushing the envelope on the technology. Must give Samsung credit where credit is due.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we're in a time where, I mean, it's fair to say it wasn't so exciting with the new product announcements in terms of, there's another new phone. They all seem to be sort of so similar. So yeah, the Galaxy Z Flip definitely it's it's definitely a little bit different from what we're kind of
bit of a my brick.
Right? And look, I think bring it on. Yep, some people will say it's a bit of a gimmick, and I would say, yeah, to a degree, it is. There's a bit of going retro with having the flip phone in there. Does it have all the things of our absolutely top phones in terms of cameras and whatnot? No, but it's it's still a pretty reasonable phone in terms of performance. 256 gigs of storage. But yeah, you've got to be pretty committed to buy it. So it's launched into the New Zealand market at $2,400. So it's by no means a low cost device. It's very much in that premium flagship type price range. But I'm sure they will be selling a few of these in the local market, as they will be around the world. But their numbers, I doubt, are going to sort of compare with a lot of the other phones. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Seems like a nice phone to me. Now, the other phone that I wanted to mention this week is because the Z Flip now has been officially available in New Zealand for a week or two. Technically, although reasonably hard to get hold of things at the moment with being under lockdown. Certainly can't walk into a store and pick it up.
No.
Is the new iPhone, the iPhone SE or SE2, as some people are dubbing it, because it's their second generation of the iPhone SE, and launched into New Zealand. It seems, I don't know, maybe this is exchange rates and GST and everything on top. Launched in the US at $399, landing in New Zealand at $799, which I don't know, it feels like they could have. I don't know, sharpen their pencil a little bit there, but that's the nature of these things. They always like sort of reasonably round numbers, and then they take $1 off for I don't know, marketing or whatever reasons. So it's launched here, or it launches in New Zealand on Friday. Basically $800 for the 64 gig, $900 for the 128, and $1,100 for the 256. What I like about it, as from what I've read so far, and I'm not going to get hands on it until maybe Thursday or Friday this week, is that it has this effectively the same smarts in it as an iPhone 11 Pro. So you're comparing it to a $2,000 plus phone on the iPhone front in terms of performance and so on. They're A13 Bionic. And so, somebody who is an iPhone fan or wanting to try out an iPhone, it's pretty good bang for buck. It's got their portrait camera front and back and so on. But yeah, it's certainly not everything that's in the the top iPhones. Simon, you're a Android user yourself. What's your take on Apple coming out with a low cost phone at $800? It's certainly a lot more than a low cost Android, but it's it's got probably a bit more in the package.
Well, my daughter was insistent on an iPhone. I'm actually an Android fan personally. Have always been pretty much Samsung, I guess. But actually, look, honestly, I'm gonna completely butcher this, but the Xiaomi M9 Pro and M10 Pro, like, I mean, this is why I didn't go straight for the.
Well, looks like we might have a slight connectivity issue there, folks. Hopefully, Simon rejoins our stream very soon. Such is the nature of the internet, we can't all get into the studio, even though it would have been wouldn't have been far to go to being in the studio today. Of course, we're under lockdown. While we wait for Simon to rejoin the stream, I'll jump onto the next topic, which is the announcement from Australia's competition watchdog, and this was pretty interesting actually. Is that Australia are saying that they're basically going to compel Facebook and Google to pay media outlets for news content. Now, this is the sort of thing that really a lot of media have been pushing for, and are saying, look, it's just not fair that that Google and Facebook get to make loads of cash off the back of our content, and yet these media outlets themselves are struggling to actually stay afloat, and particularly in these times of COVID-19, where it's even harder to find advertising dollars and so on. So yeah, pretty challenging times for the media, but this approach could well help if Australia is actually able to force Facebook and Google to start sharing some of their advertising revenue with the media outlets whose content they end up basically featuring, and generating some of their own advertising and money out of. So yeah, it's a little bit of an interesting scenario there, and I'm certainly very, very keen to see what happens. Just messaging Simon Shea there to see whether he can rejoin the stream. See how his internet connection's going. Hopefully he can pop back into our virtual studio. Oh, here we go. Let's have a look.
I have no idea. I guess you do not mention a Chinese brand phone while podcasting on iTunes, right? that was nutty timing. I'm plugging in. Sorry, just give me a second. My computer's fully rebooting. That was very spooky.
Strange times.
Sorry for that. Yeah.
No, that's all right. Now, I was just talking about this this move where the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission basically working on developing or have been working on developing a voluntary code of conduct, but the Australian government had felt it was unlikely they were going to get any voluntary agreement from the likes of Google and Facebook around sharing advertising revenue. So basically, the government is ordering them as the competition watchdog to create a code of conduct that will actually force these global tech giants to be paying Australian media for the revenue that they generate off the back of their content. And look, I know in recent days where New Zealand media have been struggling, it's certainly been raised. I know MediaWorks have been raising this with the government and highlighting that, and also highlighting the government's advertising spend on social media to get out messages about COVID-19, rather than putting all that money into local media. Do you think this makes sense? Is this a fair sort of approach to the big global players, particularly Google and Facebook, who definitely leverage off other people's content?
So the question being, are we talking about old media versus New Zealand media? Old media versus new media? I mean, like, you just got to reach your largest audience. I'd like to see the likes of Facebook and all that essentially allow for these COVID-like services to be essentially not revenue based. You always need a public audience. We need an NPR for new media, in my opinion. Something that is accessible to everyone, and especially times of need. Old media's got a lot of soul searching to do. Let's be honest here. I mean, we had our article about Fortnite yesterday come out, and my mum can't see it. My mum can't actually see it because of the paywall, and I'm just like, well, we need a new model. In all honesty, a best of both worlds, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Now onto other topics. This is one area I think is quite fascinating. Was the data that Google have collected in terms of effectively people tracking, but not in a horrible sort of spooky way, as we usually get concerned about some of the things that big tech companies do in terms of their data, but where it's very much anonymized, and where we're seeing these few graphs that have sort of been published that show how much people aren't leaving their homes, and it's been done on a sort of country by country basis, but quite encouraging to see that data. It's not really anything mind blowing, because it's sort of what you would expect, but it also backs up and does give some assuredness to the reality that most people are following the lockdown and not traveling too far. What was your take on seeing some of this, Shane?
Well, I mean, look, let's be clear here. Look, advertising is already following us. Like, we already have Facebooks and the likes of targeting us actively, based on IP addresses and locations and all that jazz. I think in times of crisis, I look at what Singapore have done. I look at what South Korea have done, where you have opt-in protocols for people to actually actively voluntarily share up that information, especially in times of need. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if the advertisers are doing it, why can't we do it in the middle of a pandemic? I mean, just to be clear, you opt in or you don't opt in. It's that simple. And honestly, we should be able to do that with Facebook and other things already. The fact that we kind of opt in by default on Facebook and other platforms for this kind of this precious information is a bit, it's not quite right. It really isn't. Yep. And so this argument that we're having about local government wanting to use such information, or at least allow us to choose to submit such information, it's a no-brainer to me personally. It makes, and I'm not surveillance state, but the fact is we're already living in a surveillance state. It's just not the states that are surveillancing us, it's the corporations. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I do like the approach that has been taken in Singapore. I know Australia have followed that, so they've got their contact tracing app. Nothing's really happened in New Zealand. I'm not sure exactly why we've stepped back from that. You've got Google and Apple working together, on an underlying offering to facilitate that. And look, some of it is really, really good from the privacy perspective, the contact tracing technology, and that it's more focused on who you've connected with, and even that's in an anonymous way rather than actually where you've been. So look, yeah, there's I guess huge amounts of data at the moment that could be useful and certainly has been useful in making the decisions. obviously a lot of it comes down to how that data is interpreted. I think we've heard ongoing information every day around stats of how many new infections there have been with COVID-19, and then how New Zealand is responding. And for those that are looking further afield, which I think most of us are to a degree, it is quite fascinating to see the approach that New Zealand takes with our data versus how Australia takes it versus how UK takes it versus how, say, Taiwan. One is a really interesting one because, for varying reasons, we don't tend to give too much coverage to Taiwan.
Yeah, which is a little shocking. Sorry, just said the way.
Yeah. Political aspects to that I'm picking, but the massive population compared to ours, yet infections lower than ours, and there are obviously some real differences in terms of culturally and how they operate compared to how we live, and of course they've had to deal with SARS and past things, but they really seem to have it down there, and to an even a dramatically greater extent than what China did on a per capita basis. So really interesting, but it's really hard, I think, at times to join up the dots and make good decisions. Fortunately, here in New Zealand, we've been in a pretty good state in terms of infections. Unfortunately, some deaths now over the last couple of weeks. That's increased. But you've got to imagine that there's a lot of numbers that are being crunched and looked at by Ministry of Health and by the government, right?
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure if that was a question or a statement, but So, look, Taiwan's done really well. It's I talk to friends and parties in China about it quite a bit, with a little bit of pullback, I guess. But so is the nature of the political beast right now that we're living in. I do believe Taiwan definitely gets to should be having a bit more recognition than they are getting in regards of how well they've actually done. But WHO and the rest of it, it's a bit of a political statement. I'm going to kind of just be a little bit shy of that one, because I've got a lot of good friends in China. So just to blatantly say it, I was actually meant to go to Shanghai on the 17th of January to propose to an ex-girlfriend, out of all things. So it was a bit of a drama situation where obviously I was going to go down there and do that in Shanghai, and then go spend time in Chinese New Year's together, and finally meet her family, and the brakes were on. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that hasn't.
Oh no,
that
that's
hasn't
okay.
worked
We're still on WeChat. We're still chatting away. She still knows. I mean, she's gonna see this. She's well aware of the situation.
The technology still helps, right?
Yeah, the technology still helps. I mean, I've been, I have pretty good lines of communication in all those respects. So it's nice. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everywhere you look with this COVID-19 situation, the threads of technology are in there, and in all sorts of ways, and often we won't know exactly how much technology is being drawn on for particular decisions, and it is sometimes hard to wonder why governments make particularly different decisions. And sometimes there's certainly an element of luck in the picture of how things land, and sometimes it's smart interpretation and use of the data. Now on to a couple more things, sort of in terms of local interest. Network for Learning, or NFL as it's they're often abbreviated to. They're the government-funded entity that provides broadband into the education market, well, particularly our schools here in New Zealand. and part of what they've provided for a long time is a level of safety, I guess, so that kids that are wandering around online, hopefully don't wander into stuff that's maybe inappropriate for them to see in their younger years. And I thought it was quite interesting that they've announced that this filtering service that they provide for schools has been opened up, so that those who are educating their children from home, which there's certainly some new connectivity being put out to homes where people maybe haven't traditionally been able to afford the internet. All of that stuff is going on right now. So they've fired up a new service in conjunction with the Ministry of Education and NetSafe called Switch On Safety, which is a service that I guess is pretty easy to set up for a family that sort of wants to open up that access to their youngsters, but wants to be a little bit more on the safe side. So I thought that was nice, because it's not something that I would have expected from Network for Learning, because their offering has always been around their managed network. And then the other thing that's to do with the current times is there was an announcement out of one of our ultra-fast broadband providers, Enable, and I guess we're getting different messages from different parts of industry around how they can help people during this time. But they're saying they're putting their wholesale broadband price increases on hold at this time. And also have options there for businesses not having to disconnect and so on. So yeah, I mean there's just so many things going on around New Zealand, as I'm sure there are in other parts of the world, to try and keep businesses operating, to try and keep people employed, to take some of that pressure off individuals that are getting caught with bills that they maybe are struggling to pay. Simon, how what have you seen in terms of challenges? I mean, your business has just recently received some funding. If you hadn't ever received the most recent funding, how much pressure would this COVID-19 situation have put you under?
Applied for the wage subsidy a few weeks ago. We're still waiting on it. So I don't really know what's going on there. They sent the application saying, yeah, we've seen your application, but I'm still waiting for my call to confirm yay or nay. Luckily, we did know that we were in the running for the mega grant for quite some time. Vaughan saying that it keeps my 4 or 5 guys well and solid for the next year. But it's we in our position, especially in the work that we're doing, we really should be in a realm of expansion right now. We haven't seen any government support, to be perfectly honest. And I've tried to do other avenues, but there's just a lot of chasing around, and it doesn't make it any easier that it's almost impossible to talk to a human being right now when you're dealing with MSD or the rest of it. I think a lot of the bigger entities are basically getting a better shake and faster responses to all of this. I don't know, but in saying it, look, I have huge admiration for what our government is doing and how they've actually been managing all of this. And I think we might just be a little bit out of the spectrum in regards to that. And we are a small, technically we're a small entity in New Zealand. All of the guys have been on contract rather than PAYE. Most small startups struggle with PAYE, to be perfectly honest. And so we might be under the radar. I have huge amount of patience, though, in regards to all of that. Though we're hoping that, we do see some local support come by. Luckily, the likes of NVIDIA and Epic Games and Amazon Web Services have actually been helping us out for quite some time. It does create unique problems, though. Obviously, we're in the business of encapsulating real-world environments. The last few years have just traveled for years, so that's kind of a bit off the cards right now. Luckily, we have a lot of stuff that we can work on while we're here, and we do have New Zealand that we would love to encapsulate and give the rest of the world as an export. you know, because we are one of the first characters out. So, you know, we're one of the first countries out the door. So
absolutely. Just a little tip. There might, you know, this may relate to you. It may relate to some listeners' businesses. But for those that do have contractors, my my impression talking to Max Whitehead, who's a bit of an employment expert and advisor type guy. In those cases, individuals might be able to apply for a subsidy themselves. So it may come through that track, because I know some businesses have been getting the government subsidy through, you know, within like 24 to 48 hours. So it might be that's a track to go. So
we're not entirely sure. We suspect it's something like that as well. But, you know, in all respects, most people in hospitality and other aspects, you know, and most people on contract. Let's be honest here. Especially the people who actually probably need the grant more than others. You know, PAYE has its luxuries. Contract is a thing. And so the guys have actually tried to do individual processes of that as well, but with no luck. So it's a massive ramp up. It's okay. Luckily we luckily we got the mega grant.
Well, I want to delve into that now, is to hear a little bit about Reality Virtual. Maybe you can start out with the background. How did you get started? I know you've been around for a good few years now, and what's that journey kind of look like to get to where you are now, and now really gaining a lot more attention globally.
Oh no, we've always had global attention. To be clear, so yeah, we've always been in that respect. I won't get into how I got into this, because that's it's been well documented, and it will be coming out in a soon to be released TEDx talk and all that kind of jazz. And it's also a very personal story, and it's one I don't actually like to share too often, because it was a real it was a difficult process of entering into it. It was basically when you get handed lemons, you make lemonade. So a personal tragedy. So, but I mean, in regards to, how do I answer that question? Necessity is the mother of all inventions. And in this case, I had a problem that I needed to solve due to this personal life situation. Prior to that, I was actually just playing drums and singing in a band. And I essentially self-taught how to capture environments and all this kind of stuff. And it just ramped up. I mean, 2015 was just playing around with experiences. Didn't really know what exactly I was doing. Hadn't been classically trained in the realm, and as a result was, by default breaking a lot of the rules. And just started showing stuff off on the internet, and NVIDIA, about 3.5 years, picked up on it, and we produced this beautiful experience called Mana VR. Which had this beautiful Maori lady singing to Kalinga on this beach with waves crashing and the rain is pouring down. And so, to do that experience alone, we invented a host of different technologies, including, RGBD, hybrid volumetric video techniques, and obviously photogrammetry, which is a big word I know most parties won't catch on to, but basically this ability of, taking thousands of photographs, and from these photographs, we're able to extrapolate immensely detailed 3D environments. And where others have struggled with the amount of data that you get from this is that how do you make it run in real time? And we really pushed that envelope of doing ultra realistic, photorealistic, real world environments running in real time. And this is where Unreal Engine got into it, because we were showing off the graphic fidelity of what they're able to deliver, and really just pushed the envelope. And so, I went from like a kid in his bedroom on the DPB, raising his daughter and taking her to Freeman's Bay School every day, to, quite frankly, Reality Virtual is well renowned as probably, well, I don't want to brag, it's a New Zealand thing, right? We can't, humble brag.
It's all syndrome.
It's all poppy syndrome. If I say, everyone's just going to block me, you know what I mean? Yeah. So,
brag. We want to hear it.
We're literally perceived. I mean, I can't even say it. We're literally known as the gold standard of ultra realistic real world encapsulation of real world places, spaces. And that's not us saying that, that's NVIDIA. So yeah, we've punched well above our weight, and we're literally just 4 or 5 guys who, up until a month ago, were just working out of a hacker house, smoking cigarettes out the window and drinking red wine late at night while eating copious amounts of pizza. And we've been punching our weight well above the likes of, I mean, it's crazy in New Zealand. We live in Weta's shadow. Like, we've talked to every major studio on the planet, but we haven't had a conversation with Weta. That's how crazy it is here. Like, I'll come back after like 9 months of flying around the world. I'll come back, and on one side there's a DPP form for me to try and apply for the dole because I've cut it. Well, I'm gone. You got to realize I'm legally blind, so the invalid's benefit was something that I was on for quite some time. Just due to my disability. But, I remember flying back, and, I'd go into the airport and there'd be the Idealog article, on the front page. And then, like hours later, I'd come back and I got my WINS form, and I'm just sitting there with both of them. I'm saying, something doesn't compute here. What's going on here? Like, how is it that, it's been difficult locally. It's been very difficult. But the work speaks for itself, and that's where I think people really need to kind of grasp what's going on here. You don't get this kind of support from Epic Games or NVIDIA or Amazon Web Services if you don't actually have anything, especially when you're not an established entity. When you're known as being, a few lads and girls just, hacking away at this stuff. So, yeah. I don't know if that was a concise answer. I do apologize. I'm a little bit flustered today. So
it's really interesting. And look, I think it's actually quite important to to hear some of the reality, right? I think when often when people hear about a successful technology firm, there isn't a lot of recognition of the journey that it takes to get to those pinnacle moments. But behind usually behind every great success story is an incredible amount of hard work and maybe some sort of hunger, hardship, or pain, or a huge amount of it, and sometimes sustained over quite a long period, and it really does take a huge amount of tenacity. And I've spoken to lots and lots of founders and leaders of varying startups and firms, and so I think that word tenacity is something that sort of keeps coming through. Those that are willing to just focus, stick at it. There are obviously lots of skills and aspects that need to come together to sustain things, but that is certainly a real common thing. So well done on getting to this point. And tell us about the this recent
everyone wants to know about the money. I get it.
Situation with Epic Games, because that's a pinnacle point that you've worked hard to obviously get that recognition and to get their funds behind you. I mean, it doesn't just come from doing something random. It comes because you guys have done some great stuff.
Well, I mean, it's found in the relationships. I mean, once again, I don't mean to hammer on about this, but I find that the communication has been a lot more one-on-one. You spend time in Los Angeles and New York and San Francisco, and you're just, you're hanging out and having a beer and having conversations and going to Hollywood parties. I remember I remember meeting Kim, the CTO of Epic, and the creator of Fortnite. They had this Hollywood party that I just managed to kind of jump into somehow. And we're just sitting there, and it's just this crazy launch startup party, and it's the networking. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is not any kind of weird personal favors or anything like that. I mean, once they got acquisition by Tencent, Chinese company, biggest game company arguably in the world, when they, I've known Epic for years. I've known them personally for years as just friends, like friends on Facebook. And then when I finally got the opportunity to jump overseas, because I'd never traveled for 35 years of my life, and I'm only 38 now. So just to give you a spectrum of how rapid this whole thing ramped up, it was like in his bedroom, Epic Games years ago gave us a $20,000 grant. And just, it was overnight. And I'm like, man, I'm just going to jump on a plane. Never been on a plane before. Let's jump on a plane. And it was, And then like, you know, for like 3.5 years, I was just kind of like momentarily dropping back into New Zealand every, you know, for a few weeks of the year. I mean, it was nuts. And it was all a lot of synchronicity and a lot of just networking. And so before I know it, I'm doing like keynotes and panels at South by Southwest and all this kind of jazz. And so just really getting to know the people and having this personal relationship. I mean, a genuine, you know, level of intimacy. And so people start batting for you. And so you start creating a movement. And so, you know, I describe us more as like a rock band than a startup, to be honest. I know that sounds weird, but it's more akin to that kind of lifestyle and you know, running around the planet and just, you know, doing cool things and meeting cool people. And but, you know, and so the remote access aspect of this has actually been really native to us because we've been doing this pretty much the whole time. Like the team at home have been just kind of chugging away at a lot of these components while I essentially spread the gospel. And do the travel and get to know the people and engage in the conversations. You know, I mean, like with Nefertari, you know, what was that, 2 years ago, 2 months ago? You know, I've just flown 29 hours. I land in Luxor, Egypt. You know, I spent 8 hours in a tomb with 5 guys with AK-47s above us. And then I fly back. You know, and it's just like, okay, I just got to go in a tomb by myself. Yeah. Okay,
so what did that actually look like? What was it like being you know, being in some of these locations where you've gone, and what are you doing? You're basically capturing that 3D, very high def sort of footage to bring together to create that virtual reality experience. How do you go about doing that?
Well, I mean, it's you know, I got this Pelican case, which I don't think you can see behind me, but it's just this like big Pelican case. And it's got a whole bunch of, oh yeah, there you go. I'm trying to point to it because I think that you can see where I'm pointing. Sorry about that. So yeah, just a big Pelican case where we're just, you know, it's got a bunch of specific camera equipment that we use, though it's actually relatively straightforward. It's the processing that we do afterwards that really pushes us separate to the rest. But you know, jump on a plane, get to Luxor, Egypt. You know, you go down, you take 4,000 photographs, something like that. You know, spend about 6-8 hours. It was so hot, by the way. It was so hot down there. Drank like liters of water. And you know, you got these photographs, you take them back, you process them using a whole host of different techniques and a bunch of internal software we use. We use third-party products that, you know, we actually brag about quite a bit because they've been extremely good to us. Capturing reality have given us, you know, tens of thousands of dollars worth of licensing and whatnot. And so we like to work with others in that respect. But yeah, it's really the processing we do afterwards that puts us apart. But it's the actual acquisition is pretty straightforward. Just run around with a camera, take some photos, you know, and the computer's able to use back up the planet. The computer's able to use that deep learning and photogrammetry techniques and algorithms to extrapolate this data. And so what we're really in the business of and what we're really pushing with now is how do we speed up this process and mass scale it? So, you know, there's a lot of, it took us 2 years ago, it took us 3 guys, 6 weeks, you know, $20,000 to go and do Nefertari, which is actually a bargain compared to what other companies and parties have been oh, sorry, this is sunlight, have been pushing it. But you know, a big part of that 6-week process was 5 weeks of a process called retopology, which is an extremely slow and tedious process. And it's frustrating for the artist to actually work on. It's pushing pixels. It's extremely time consuming and exhausting. And it's probably the largest aspect of the overall cost. So where we're pushing ahead with is that we're looking at deep learning to help us automatically retopologize these environments. So we had a 6-week process, $20,000, now you can cut down to 1 week. And our 6-week process was already considerably faster than anyone else because we're already using a whole bunch of other techniques to automate the process, you know, extrapolating all the different layers of reality in itself. So you can take a photo, that's great, but it's got baked lighting from the sun. So we've developed a tool that uses AI to remove the lighting, but also extrapolate things that we refer to as roughness maps. So how shiny is something, how reflective is it, how, you know, it's shimmer and shine, but also a bunch of other detailed maps as well, like what we call displacement or basically depth maps. So 3D information from a single photograph, so that's extremely important. And so all these processes that would have to have artistic interpretation can now be, relatively speaking, completely automated. And so this is where Weta should be having a conversation with us, because we are building tools that
let's hear your pitch to Weta. So someone from Weta will no doubt hear this. Obviously, the message hasn't got through so far. So what's your pitch to Weta on what you can do for them?
Look, with deep PBR alone, deep physically based rendering, that tool in itself, basically what would take a team of 30, 3 months to produce, a single guy with a camera can now produce in a day. So what would take a team of 30, 3 months, these texture artists who are having to push all these pixels and design all these maps, right, that you need for game engines and real-time VFX and post-production and studio and all that kind of jazz. We're talking about fully automated, contextually aware, consistent automation of the process, and that in itself is massive. And look, to be perfectly honest, the job sucks. The job really sucks. It's a terrible job. Everyone, they've just got these guys in the bottom of the basement working on this and just churning through these people and burning them out. It's not a fun job. We're saying, bugger that. So I don't know if that's a swear word. I hope that's not overseas. We're talking about, automating this massively. And so now these guys who are stuck in the basement, in the dark, can now actually go out and take some photographs and get some light and enjoy it. So that's just one tool of many tools that we are pushing forward with deep learning through the whole automation process. And it's going to be an extremely disruptive tool to gaming, VFX, virtual studio production. It massively upscales our ability to massively produce environments. And so where we're really pushing now is, how do we democratize this to the world? And so we're looking at this thing called an artist rights management system, where you have people on the ground. So I'm a musician myself, and so APRA will occasionally, back in the day, they'll occasionally write me a little check to say thank you for your, music on BFM or whatever, right? And so we want to do that for people on the ground acquisitioning this data. So when you're out there anywhere in the world, you're taking these photographs, you can submit it to the system, and it's peer-to-peer, so it's equally distributed and archived for archival purposes. Think of a kind of a heritage initiative here. But if a studio or a game company or a museology environment like a museum or whatnot, or an educational facility needs to access one of these locations, we treat ourselves very much like Kodak. We would process those negatives and then provide it to that company under strict licensing use based on what the individual has allowed those photographs to be used for. The individual actually gets paid for the time that they put in acquisitioning that data, reality, virtual, or actual reality, or whatever we call that component of our entity. Essentially, gets paid for doing the cost overhead. We keep it as cheap as possible because we want a mass scale. The studio gets an incredibly detailed, realistic environment to use for studio production and or education and whatnot. And the better thing is this: the general public get that location as well. Not stripped down. It just doesn't have the educational elements, or doesn't have the use case of virtual studio production. It's just the environment. They actually get to go and jump in and see it. And so we're basically providing mass scale virtualization of the planet, while also think of public. It's like national public radio. Thanks to our sponsors, we provide you this show. It really is just it's just a retake of 20th century television and national public radio, NPR and national radio and all that jazz. But we're doing it on obviously in the virtual realm rather than the flat TVs that we're looking at now. Yeah. Which pivots on to the other concept, which is really cool.
Very cool. Oh, that's exciting. And so, sorry, what's the other concept that you're alluding to there?
Oh, well, obviously deep mirror. So, here we are having this video conference, and we're struggling to have eye contact with one another because it depends on where our camera is versus where the screen is. And so in the crisis of the current situation, here we are working on deep PBR and these old volumetric video RGBD hybrid techniques that we've been using in the past. And we've been sitting on both. And our hybrid video technique was extremely lightweight, could run on 4G, It can use standard Connect or Connect sensors that you get on an Xbox One, and it was able to get really good noise, removal of the noise, upscale all these maps that I was talking about earlier that are required to do this stuff, and stream it on a 4G mobile platform, right? And so we've been sitting on that technology for years, and we're wondering why no one's lapping it up. And I'm just like screaming to the rooftops, going, guys, we have this thing, and everyone's too busy throwing millions of dollars into 8i, cough, cough, and other entities here in New Zealand. And we're like, look, this is something that's mass distributable. A lot of people have these Connect sensors. People can't the problem with volumetric video in the past was just the bandwidth. It was too heavy. You had to download like 2 gigs for like 1 minute of video. And we're talking about like 100 megabytes a minute. So, we're trying to say, well, look, if you want volumetric video and all this stuff to take off, you need to find a way to have indie studios and all the rest of it, be able to use this stuff. So that's something we've been working on. So when COVID-19 took place, here we are using deep learning to extrapolate all these, awesome details and maps, and we're getting this faster and faster. And we also have this volumetric video technique that we've just shelved for the last few years, sadly. And we're like, well, why don't we just go live? Why don't we just make this live? Why don't we use deep PVR to extrapolate all the maps that we need, all the 3D information? The fact that I can do this and extrapolate what its 3D is using AI in real time, and then I can use a volumetric technique to stream it on a 4G platform. It's basically what we refer to as dark mirror. It's basically an immersive one-on-one telepresence system that when I lean like this side to side, I'm actually seeing the different angles of your face. And when I'm going forward, we're both sharing an actual shared.
Right. So you move forward, it's as though you're leaning in towards the person and you're sitting next to them.
And this is just using a standard monitor and a standard webcam, because the webcam also knows where I am and it follows me. So the webcam, the screen update I get of you is pivoted, like as in real space. And so we refer to it as like talking through a sheet of glass to someone. And even more so where it gets interesting is we can do that in conjunction with lighting. So my lighting that you see on me, right? How do I describe this? The lighting that is kind of a bit of I see my lighting on you. My environment, if the sun comes down that corner, it casts on your face on the same angle. You see your lighting on me. So it's not just the fact that we're sharing 3D space, we're actually sharing the same light. Yeah, sorry, I had to pause there. Dramatic pause.
That sounds pretty impressive. Well, that's definitely something you should be, licensing or, what have you. It definitely sounds like something that could be monetized. So,
well, yeah. I mean, Zoom. Sorry, buddies. Look, this is something that we came to fruition and realized we could do in the last 3 weeks. So, I kid you not. I mean, the last 3-4 weeks, this literally just came about as a, look, necessity is the mother of all invention. I said it again. It's how I got into this in the first place. And so we know we have all these pre-existing technologies. We're just literally right now working on repackaging it to do this new thing. And so we're pushing for July as an early beta. Though we're honestly, where we've had this gift from Epic and others, where we'd really love to see parties come in, is we want to rapidly upscale the business essentially. And we can tackle this in a year, but we want to tackle this in 3 months. And so what Epic's given us is it's given us support for a year for the current people we have. We want to, no offense, as a bit of an anarchist, we want to capitalize on the situation and really bring this to market as soon as possible. And so we're talking to local parties and all the rest to see if they can actually finally get behind us, and essentially match dollar for dollar for what the international brands have done for us. So
good.
Considering, yeah. So that's my plug.
Yeah. All right. Well, good luck with that. That's cool.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Well, great to chat today. Look, I'm sure we could probably spend a lot more time talking because it's fascinating stuff. But we've kind of reached our end spot. Yeah. So look, for people that are interested in finding out a bit more about Reality Virtual, maybe somebody wants to get in touch to invest in some way or use your services. How do they? Where's the best way to get through to you?
Well, I mean, you've got the website, so realityvirtual.co. I mean, it's in the name of the company. Is actually the website itself. but we've got a strong internet presence. I mean, we're really easy to find, especially news-wise. I mean, we've got a dozen articles and podcasts and all that stuff. I mean, the information is all out there. If you go to the website, you can see all the prior texts we've done, all the talks we have done. I'll be linking to this talk eventually, and just realityvirtual.co, Simon@realityvirtual.co. I don't want to be bombed though. So
there we go. No, I'm sure you won't be. But, no, it's always good to have a direct contact. That's great. Excellent. Was there anything else that you wanted to add before we finish up, Simon?
No, I'm just excited to actually make our country proud. I really think New Zealand's in a unique position to push ahead and actually be a leading tech innovator. We just need to stop throwing it all at the old boys club and actually get behind the new blood. So, yeah. Excellent.
All right. Well, best of luck, and we'll look forward to getting an update again, and hopefully not too distant future. And we'll look forward to seeing how things progress, Simon.
Cool. Thank you. It's been a fun show. Thank you, Paul.
Likewise. Enjoyed it.